Alright everybody, what's going on? This is Alex once again with the EOT News Flash, and you are catching us right in the midst of our Core 2020 Limited Set Review. We've already done the white cards, which you can go and check out on YouTube right now, and tonight of course, following in Wooburg order, we are on to my favorite cards, the blue ones. So if you haven't watched one of these before, we're operating on a 4-point scale. The ones are the cards you should never play. They're utter trash. Twos are the cards you're going to mostly find in your deck a lot of the times. Filler creatures, mediocre spells, and things of that nature. Threes are going to be your more powerful spells, premium creatures, premium removal. And the fours are your absolute bombs that'll pull you into a color and really just set the tempo for your deck. It's a rare, it's a mythic, it's a powerful spell, anything like that. And then also we have our two additional categories for sideboard, which is going to be S, and Bs, which are build around me's. Sideboards are cards that you want to bring in if your opponent presents you with a threat that's not normally dealt with within what I would consider to be normal deck construction, like a wacky enchantment or something like that, or a creature that needs a very specific kind of removal. And your build around me cards are the ones that need a certain engine built around them before they actually function to their fullest potential. So pretty simple stuff here. Super hyped on these blue cards already, just going through them. Let's not waste any time and jump right into it with Aether Gust. One in a blue instant and uncommon. You choose target spell or permanent that's red or green. Its owner puts it on the bottom or top of their library. So it's kind of a counter spell and also a bounce spell. It's very cool. It has a little bit of built-in modality to it. So this is simply a sideboard card here, but when you do bring it in, this is a massive, massive tempo play to stop, a burn spell, a green combat trick, their big dragon, what have you, and just throw it to the bottom of their library. I don't think there's going to be too many opportunities for you to put it on top of your library unless it's your own spell, and if you can get really tricky with that, then you're miles ahead against your opponent, so that's pretty cool there. But as far as cards go, this is just a sideboard card. It's very powerful when it goes off, but I wouldn't be too high on trying to jam this all the time. Next up, we've got the Agent of Treachery. 5 blue for a rare human rogue. It's a 2/3. As it enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. Permanently, too. Permanently permanents. Nice. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, you draw 3 cards. So Agent of Treachery here is a really interesting card. It's very powerful what it does. And I had to basically look at this and say, would I pay a total of 7 mana for this effect? Basically, a 2/3 creature and a mind control, which are roughly 3 and 4 mana respectively. So the answer to that is kind of yes. And since this is stealing anything, that gives us a lot more power to it. Now this secondary effect of drawing 3 cards if you control the permanents, that is super hard to actually pull off in this format. Within blue, there are actually 3 cards that actually help enable this, but this makes it such a build around me that it is quite difficult. But if you first pick this or it's in your pool and you've got the other cards, well, we'll get to those in a minute and I will highlight those. It's not inconceivable for you to pull this off. And if you do, awesome. And if you can send me a picture of that, I will send you 100,000 EOT News Flash bucks, which as always have absolutely zero monetary value other than to say that you have them. No one's redeemed my offer just yet, so disappointed. So that being said, Agent of Treachery, I give it a 1.75. The body is respectable, but the cost is quite high, and you really do need a very good target to make this actually be worth it. But it's still definitely powerful, though. Next up, we've got a card that is absolutely good for limited. Wow, I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is Air Elemental. You know this guy from a million core sets. 3 blue, flying elemental, uncommon, 4/4. That's it. There's nothing else you can say about this card other than it's good, huge body, tons of power, hard to race, 2.25, one of probably the marquee cards in blue for this set. And next up we've got Anticipates. This is the art from Battle for Zendikar, if I'm not mistaken. 1 in a blue gets you an instant at common, looks at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. It's good that this is not like an Augur of Bolus type effect where it's only getting a specific card type. And this actually allows you to go and get lands if you're short on those in your hand. So a 2-land hand plus an Anticipate isn't all that terrible to keep. Card selection, of course, is powerful, limited, but it does suck to put good cards on the bottom of your library if you really need one of those 3 cards. that can have a negative effect on the game. I wouldn't go out of my way to play too many of these. I did give it a 1.75 just because I do believe it is playable, but I'm not going to go out of my way to jam a bunch of these into my deck. Next up, we have got ourselves our first blue legendary, Artemis. Atemis. There's no R here. Atemis, All-Seeing. 3 blue. Legendary creature Sphinx. Rare 4/5 flying. You can pay 2 and a blue and tap him or her. It, Sphinx. Do Sphinxes have gender? Tap Atemis. Draw 2 cards and then discard a card. And whenever Atemis All-Seeing deals damage to an opponent, you may reveal your hand. If cards with at least 6 different converted mana costs are revealed this way, that player loses the game. Holy shit. What conceivable deck have you constructed where you have that much of a spread? Like, I just can't. There's no way this is doable limited. Again, if you can pull this off, by all means, I'll give you a billion EOT news bucks, but this is ridiculous. Now, granted, if you do try and go for this, it's possible. Of course, lands are your zeros. That's kind of an easy one to pull off. The draw effect is going to help you get there, but I'm not going to be like, hey, look at my hand. It's not going to happen ever. And if I do get blown out by this in a draft, I'm just going to say, good job. You did what could just considerably be the impossible in this format, but whatever. Just use this to draw cards. That's what I'm doing with this. I give it a 2.25. The only downside is that triple blue mana cost. But other than that, that's a lot of card draw in a deck and is very, very powerful in the late game just to beat down with it. Next up, we've got Befuddle. 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Target creature gets -4/-0 till the end of turn and draws you a card. This is a decent tempo play. We're not seeing a ton of the typical blue removal like we have in previous sets. I mean, it's definitely here, but this is definitely more in line with what they're trying to do with blue as a tempo deck in Limited. And this is a really good example of that. Card draw is always good. And the -4 is actually going to be a considerable amount of power taken off of your opponent's creatures. And hopefully will let you trade in combat effectively. I gave Befuddle a 1.75. Next up, we have got Bone to Ash with a nice little flavor text from my good buddy Ludovic the Necro Alchemist. 2 blue instant at common, counter target creature spell and draw a card. Simply put, creatures rule Limited for the most part. Draft is a little bit different where you can certainly draft a much more controlling deck with only a handful of creatures for finishers. But for the most part, especially in your pre-release, which is coming up next weekend, this can be just a main deckable spell every single time. I like this card quite a bit. Drawing a card is all the better, and tacking on extra mana to effectively a cancel is pretty good in my book, so I gave this one a 2. And next up, we have got the Boreal Elemental. 4 and a blue for a creature elemental, common, 3/4 flyer, and spells your opponent's cast that target Boreal Elemental cost 2 more to cast. So it's taxing the removal, things of that nature. And that's pretty powerful here. And for the cost, this is a massive, massive flyer. This is a solid 2 for me here. Definitely would like to put this in almost any blue deck of mine. Maybe not in mass quantities, but at least 1 or 2 of these will make my blue decks, I would say, more often than not. Quite an impressive threat here at common. Next up, we've got the Brine Cut Throat. 1 and a blue for a Merfolk Pirate at uncommon 2/1 that has Flash. Me gusta. And whenever you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Brineborn Cut Throat. So the ability to do this is definitely appealing. If you're in blue, there's a good number of instant speed spells, things like Befuddle, Bone to Ash, Anticipate. Those are the things that are going to let you make good use of this creature's ability here. And I'm always a sucker for a 2/1 with Flash. At the very least, it's like an Ambush Viper, and if you can fire off some spells to go along with it, this is a very good threat. And I might be a little bit higher on it than other people, but this is a solid 2.5 for me. Really good card, very cheap, powerful threat. Speaking of powerful threats here, we've got Captivating Gaze. 4 blue sorcery uncommon, return up to 3 target creatures to their owner's hands. Now, this is actually, there are 4 cards that power up the Agent of Treachery here. But to me, this is just a, one-sided, basically, board wipe. This is time walk for your opponent, just times 3, if you ask me. Bouncing 3 creatures is going to set them so far behind. They have to redeploy. If the board's stalled out and this is like your trump, this is an awesome card here. I would easily first pick this in a draft, and this will more than likely make every one of my blue decks in Limited. I gave the Captivating Gyre here a 2.5. Massive tempo swing. And next up, we've got the Cavalier of Gales. 2 blue, creature elemental knight, mythic rare, flying, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your top of your hand on top of your library in any order. And when it dies, shuffle it into your library and then scry 2. Wow, this brainstorms and it might even come back. This is awesome. Yeah, the triple blue is the only thing holding this back as it is with all the other Cavalier Elemental Knights. But this is a massive threat. Obviously, Brainstorm, the first ability here, is not as good without shuffle effects in Limited, which there just aren't any in this format, as far as I'm aware. So don't go out of your way to just get hyped on that. But this is a very powerful beater. I give it a 2.5. This card is very powerful, very good, and very hard to race. Flies and just beats down like nobody's business. Alright, moving right along, we've got a little Cerulean Drake. 1 in a blue creature Drake uncommon, 1/1 flyer, protection from red, so it cannot be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, or equipped by anything red. And you can sacrifice Cerulean Drake and counter target spell that counters you. In constructed formats that aren't reliant on opening booster packs, drafting booster packs, limited pools, this can do some things, blanking Banefire, pretty sweet in Limited, right, or in Standard right now. But this is not something I'm going to go out of my way to draft unless I am in a hyper-aggressive blue deck that just wants to curve out with, 1, 2, and 3 drop flyers, have anything that allows me to play a tempo game. And, this might be viable against certain decks, but for the most part, I'm really underwhelmed by this card. I give it a 1.5. The body's weak, and the trigger basically useless and limited as well, so pass. Especially when I can play things like this. We've got Cloudkin Seer, 2 in a blue elemental wizard at common, 2/1 flyer that draws a card when it enters the battlefield. Yeah! That's my kind of card right there. Blue is freaking so good in this set. So good. Yeah, this is a solid beater. Amazing stats for the cost. Draws the card. Awesome. Solid 2.25 for me. Very good stuff. And next up, we've got Convolute. 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Counter target spell unless its opponent pays 4. So pay an extra mana, get a bigger mana leak, essentially. This is pretty rough to hold up on turn 3, especially if your opponent can just sniff it out. Maybe they've played, a 2-drop and you haven't played anything. And, well, they just might want to beat down instead of playing anything into your Convolute here. That being said, if the game goes along and you're able to keep the board at parity and they've got a big play on a certain turn and you've been able to hold up mana if you're maybe in a more tempo-oriented blue deck, this will spike everything in this format if they tap out for it. Or even things that they don't tap out for, it is unlikely for them to be able to pay for 4 mana except it's in the extreme late game when they draw their 2-drop on turn 10. Other than that, this card is pretty powerful. I give it a 1.75 for me. Might not make every blue deck, but it will make a majority of the ones that are a little bit more controlling, a little bit more on the tempo side of things. Next up, we've got Dig Through Time. I kid, of course. No, this is drawn from Dreams, guys. This is 2 and 2 blue. Sorcery rare. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. Yeah, this is basically Dig Through Time, but it's fixed, obviously. And the artwork is just gorgeous here. It is as good as Dig Through Time is, or was, I should say. This is about the rate that Dig Through Time was usually being cast for in Limited. or I should say standard at least. Obviously, completely degenerate in modern legacy vintage. It's too good there. But here, this is a very powerful card here. It's going to let you dig through a good majority of your deck. By the time that you have gotten to turn 4, whenever you're able to cast this, you're going to see about half your deck at that point. Just just the way you construct your deck, obviously, you're going to be able to see about half of it. So you're going to be able to find your best threats, or find your removal, your counter magic, your creatures that you need to win the game. What have you. This is going to help you find it. So I gave Drawn Turn Rings here a 2.5. This is a very, very powerful card here indeed, and I do expect this to see play in Standard as well on the back of Teferi Time Raveler, because this instant speed is pretty awesome. Next up, we've got ourselves a nice returning threat from Dark Ascension, I believe this was originally printed. Dungeon Geist. 2 and 2 blue for a rare spirit, 3/3 flyer as it enters the battlefield. Tap target creature an opponent controls, and that creature does not untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control the Dungeon Geists. This is a really, really powerful card here. It's a great tempo play, keeps their best threat down, and the fact that it flies is just icing on the cake. This is a 2.75, probably closer to a 3 actually, but just it's an unreal. It's an easy first pick and belongs in every blue deck. If they can't kill this thing, it's going to take a game over for very, very quickly. Really good card here. Next up, we have got the Ferry Miscreant. 1 blue gets you a Fairy Rogue at common 1/1 with flying. As it enters the battlefield, if you control another creature named Ferry Miscreant, you may draw a card. So this is our blue version of the creatures that care about other copies of themselves already in play, or in one case, in the graveyard. And this one it's not terrible. I would want to have, a bare minimum of 3 copies to increase my odds of actually having 1 in play when I already have this coming down. It's a 1.75 for me. And until you do have those 3 copies, I don't think it's very playable. At 2, the odds just aren't good enough to draw it. But at 3, I do think there's a really good potential to have this come down, draw you cards. And of course, this does belong in that blue tempo deck as well. So I think it's playable, but you've got to have a good quantity of them before it becomes an actual threat instead of just a pest. Or a miscreant, if you will. Next up, we have got Flood of Tears. 4 blue sorcery rare, return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is insanely powerful in Limited. So honestly, it's no Cyclonic Rift. It's River's Rebuke for the whole table, including yourself, which is just awesome. And if you're playing a more tempo-oriented game where you might only have 1 or 2 threats to your opponent's 6, this is an excellent way to upset the board, have something be put into play if you had the 4 requisite to get that trigger to go off. This is seriously powerful stuff here, ladies and gentlemen. I gave let's see, where did it go? Flood of Tears, this is a 2.75 for me. Yeah, insanely powerful card here, an easy first pick, and again, any blue deck will want this. Not hard to recommend this one at all. On the other hand, we've got Fortress Crab here. 3 blue crab, common 1/6, and that's it. Yeah. It blocks everything in the set for the most part, but that's about it. I'm only okay. I don't want to make the Wish Coin crab comparison here, because that's just it's not correct. It's not correct at all here. That thing actually ended games in a relatively short amount of time. This thing takes a cataclysmically slow amount of time to kill somebody. Only the most controlling slow decks in the format will actually want to play this, to just drop it and let it sit until their opponent has literally nothing else, and then you slowly turn it sideways and march ever so glacially slow to victory. Yeah, don't 1.5 for me, guys. Don't play this one. Next up, we've got the Frilled Sea Serpent, another returning card from M19. 4 blue creature serpent at not mythic. Wow. I'm tired. At common, 4/6, and it has a 5 blue activation cost to give it unblockable till the end of turn. Reel it in! No, wait! Throw it back! The art on this is just insane. You actually see the body under the water. It's so rad. So rad. This is a really good finisher in a blue deck if you are missing or got some of your other bombs removed. This is going to be a pretty easy one to pick up at really any point in the draft. I would take this, later in the packs. If I'm missing out on a good finisher in my sealed pool, I wouldn't be too unhappy about playing this. Obviously, there are better cards, but for a 6-mana finisher, and then it's at 7 mana, you might not have a ton of things to do with your mana, so turning this thing on and just having it beat down for 4 is quite powerful, and mana sinks are typically quite powerful in Limited, even though this is more of just a one-shot sink in this case. Next up, we've got one of my favorite cards. I believe this was last seen in M15, if I'm not mistaken. We've got ourselves the Frostlinks. 2 and a blue elemental cat, common, 2/2. As it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, and that creature does not untap during its controller's next untap step. I love effects like this. I love good tap effects in Limited. I gave the Frostlink here a solid 2. It's a good tempo play and is a really good expression of just what mono, or what, I'm not saying mono blue, but just blue decks want to do in Limited in general. Tap things down, get them for some quick points of damage, and get ready for another turn of tricky tempo plays. Good stuff here, bread and butter. Next up here is Hardcover. I actually didn't read what the name of this card was. But then I looked at the art and I was like, oh, it's like books and stuff. And then I read the name. It's funny. It's clever. Good job, Wizards. A single blue mana gets you an enchantment aura, add uncommon, that enchants a creature, and the enchanted creature gets +0/+2, and has tap, draw a card, and discard a card. This is actually one of those things I would not be embarrassed to play in Limited. Typically, I'm not a big fan of enchantment auras, specifically ones that want me to keep my creature in combat. This, however, wants me to let it sit back and draw me cards, which is all that I want to do in Limited. So I need to find a relatively defensive play, God forbid a Fortress Crab, or just, anything that I'm done attacking with to just maybe get one more good block out of it. If it's a relatively weak creature attacking, I can start turning to my deck with this thing and find my win cons, because as any good Limited player knows, card advantage is what wins you games of Limited. Your opponent will run out of cards before you do, and if you can capitalize on that advantage, resources will always win out, obviously, but card advantage is absolutely king in Limited, and I gave Hardcover here a 2.25. Looting, always good in Limited. And next up was a card I am super excited they are reprinting, because I need one for EDH. This is Ley Line of Anticipation. This is the third of our reprint Ley Lines in this set. 2 blue enchantment at rare. If it's in your opening hand at the beginning of the game, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. So it's in your opening 7, right into play. And you get the ability to play spells as though they had flash. I love this card so much. I love things that have flash. Instant speed, flash creatures, snapcaster mages, restoration angels. I love all of it. This is my jam right here. I might be a little bit biased. I might be too high on this one. I probably am, and I'm not going to deny that. But having everything at instant speed, I mean, just turn 0. Live the dream. It is a bit of a build around me, obviously. You definitely want to have the deck. I mean, once you have this in your deck, you're taking advantage of it. I would probably jam this in every blue deck I have, more than likely. If you have it on turn 0, awesome. If you don't, Limited games are typically a little bit more grindy, especially in your pre-releases. Aggro decks rarely come together of such a caliber that you couldn't take off turn 4 to play this and then on turn 5 just sit and wait. That's a good feeling. So I gave this a 2.25 just because of the absurd amount of flexibility that this card grants you. Very, very powerful stuff here. And next up, we've got Masterful Replication. 5 and a blue instant at rare. You may choose one option, create 2 3/3 colorless golden artifact creature tokens, or choose target artifact you control, and each other artifact you control becomes a copy of that effect until the end of turn. Basically, that last box of text does not exist in this format. I looked at the artifacts quickly again. Nothing in there worth doing. Make some golems at instant speed. Have some blockers. Some surprise attackers at their instep. That's what you need to do with this card. 2.25. 6 power is a ton of power, especially for the rate. Like, this is Titan power we're talking about here. And it's across 2 bodies. Very, very powerful. A solid 2.25 for me here. And next up, we have got Metropolis Sprite. 1 and a blue for a fairy rogue at common, 1/2 with flying. You can pay a blue and give it +1/+0 till the end of turn, so you basically flip its power and toughness. It's a decent blue beater. I am not super excited about this. In the later turns where I do have the mana available that I'm not using on my turn or my opponent's turn, I can at least get a little bit more power out of this, but it isn't doing a whole lot of blocking. Attacking is kind of mediocre, but this is one of the, at least I will say, better common flyers if you are going to go for that more tempo-oriented deck. It's not super exciting. It's a 1.75 for me. And next up, we've got a card that this thing makes me giggle. I don't understand why this has Defender. I mean, I get it. It's like a wall of piranhas, but come on. Moat Piranhas, 1 and a blue, fish, common, 3/3 Defender. It's adorable. This is basically just a really good defender in the early games. Your opponent will have a hard time attacking into this, being a 3/3, and I really don't think that you'll care if it's not attacking. Maybe if you can get Gauntlets of Light on it at some point. Wait, no, you can't do that at that point. But anyway. But yeah, like, just put this down, let it block for you. If it dies, it dies. It might trade a few times, and it's going to force your opponent to have some combat tricks for it. So, not embarrassing, but it's a fun little card to play with for a more sort of defensive controlling, maybe a blue-black deck would want this more than typical blue-white. Next up, oh baby, we've got Mu Yanling Sky Dancer. We first saw this lady in the international series, or global series, the Mu Yanling and Yang Jinggu, I believe, the Planeswalker from War of the Spark, and now we're seeing her for the second time. Anyway, 1 blue, legendary Planeswalker, Yanling, mythic rare, 2 starting loyalty. You can +2 her, and until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 and loses flying. -3, create a 4/4 blue elemental bird creature token with flying. And -8, you get an emblem with islands you control have tap, draw a card. Ooh, I like this. Unfortunately, she has very little non-limited application for her. She's not that powerful outside of limited and sealed in draft, but she's really good if you can keep her defended in your limited games where the threats aren't coming hard and fast. The +2 is a great defensive tempo play, and if you can just plus her once and make a bird, I think you've gotten your value out of her. It takes a lot of so we got 2 to 4, 6, 8. So it takes 4 turns to get her to a point where you can pop that ultimate. And if you can protect her, go for it and just draw all the cards in the world. Awesome. She's a 2.75 for me just because she doesn't do as much as I'd like her to do. She doesn't have a massive impact on the game, but if you can get to the point where she's drawing tons of cards, go for it. Next up, we've got a oldie but a goodie. It's Negate. Simple stuff here. This is the Ixalan art, if I'm not mistaken. 1 and a blue, instant at common, counter target non-creature spell. Simple and efficient magic. On average, your limited decks will have 17 creatures, 6 or 7 spells, and the rest of it is all land. So usually every deck has at least 1 good target for this. The draft decks that can take full advantage of this are your more controlling blue-red, blue-black, blue-white decks that really have a good tempo and removal game plan built into them. So I'm not, super mad about having to play this in limited. Your opponent will always have a big spell to cast that you can counter with this. So I'm not going to be playing a bunch of these. And if I'm playing a more aggressive blue deck, like maybe like a blue-red elemental deck, I might be less inclined to play this. But this is a pretty solid card that I will include in a majority of my blue decks. This is a solid 2. Next up, we've got Octo Prophet. I love that name, Octo Prophet. 3 and a blue, creature octopus at common, 3/3. As it enters the battlefield, you scry 2, so look at the top 2 cards of your library, and then put any number of them on the bottom of your library and the rest on top in any order. I like this guy. This is basically, I'm going to call him Scry Giant, because a 4-mana 3/3 is a hill giant. Nice. Yeah, this is really powerful stuff here for common. The body is good, the ability is good, and as we're going to see here in just a second, actually, there's a couple cards in this set that actually let us rebuy this effect. And as I mentioned before, card advantage, card selection will win you a game of Limited quite handily. This is a solid 2.25 for me. And here we go. This is our blue artifact for the set. This is Portal of Sanctuary. 2 and a blue artifact at uncommon. You may pay 1 and tap it, and return target creature you control and each aura attached to it to its owner's hand, and activate this ability only during your turn. That's the only downside to this card. Did it not say that? This is amazing. It's still pretty darn good as is. I gave this a 2 point. This is a solid. It's a solid 2. But once you've built the deck around it that it wants to be in, this skyrockets in value because all of a sudden you're rebuying Octo Prophet, you're rebuying Agent of Treachery, your Ferry Miscreants. You know, there's a lot of ETB effects in blue that you want to abuse, and this is the card to do it with. You know, 1 extra mana is pretty inconsequential if you can just recast the thing that you just bounced to your hand. I'm not sure about having the auras be a thing there, but obviously you'll be able to save those, you know, if it actually matters. But this is a very, very powerful card. Like I said, build around it and abuse the heck out of your ETB triggers and just bury your opponent in card advantage and tap effects and scry and loot and just, ugh, this card's gross when it goes off and it's right and it's done right. Unlike this next card, which this card makes me mad. This exists still. Renowned Weaponsmith. 1 in a blue, human artificer, uncommon. You may tap it to add 2 generic mana that can only be spent to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts, like Portal of Sanctuary. Okay, not super off this card now. And you can pay a blue and tap it to search your library for a card named Heartpiercer Bow or Vial of Dragonfire. Reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. I know I said there aren't search effects in this format. This is not a good search effect because the cards that it's going and getting are bad. Like, I don't like this card at all. I disliked it even more because when we had this first printed in Fate Reforged, we only knew what Heartpiercer Bow was. Vial of Dragonfire came in the next set. It's like a giant tease. Like, I don't know. This card makes me mad. It's a build around me because if you don't have the cards to go get it with it, why are you playing it? You're not playing it for the body. It's not very good. And you probably don't have any artifacts in your deck to play with this either. So just, no. Build around me, and I wouldn't want to build around it even. So, no. Moving on. To Sage's Row Denizen. This is a throwback all the way to Return to Ravnica. All of the colors had a Denizen in their set, or their color, I should say. And this is our blue one here. 2 in a blue, Vidalcan Wizard at common. 2/3, whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So there is a teeny tiny mill sub-theme to blue here, and this is the enabler for it. So if you have a couple of these, maybe, oh, I don't know, Portal of Sanctuary. You see where I'm going. This is a 2.25 just on stats alone. Like, it's playable by itself. Any incident value that you get from having blue creatures into the battlefield is just icing on the cake. So I would not be embarrassed to put this in any blue deck, and obviously if you can really get the engine going, it's that much better. So really good stuff here. Solid 2.25 for me. Next up, we've got Scholar of the Ages. 5 blue creature human wizard at uncommon. It's a 3/3. And when Scholar of the Ages enters the battlefield, return up to 2 target instant and or sorcery cards from your graveyard to your hand. This is powerful stuff here for the decks that want to build around her effects and have counter magic, bounce spells, other types of removal, you know. This is a really good top of the curve card for it. And even though she does cost 7, which granted, is a lot of mana. To be able to rebuy upwards of maybe 6+ mana worth of spells is just awesome. And, you know, like I've already said before, card advantage is king in Limited, and being able to rebuy a counter spell or a removal spell for your opponent's creatures are just, it's going to put you so far ahead, and into the late game where she comes online is just awesome. So I gave our Sailor here, it's a 2.25 with a bit of a build around me, but once you do have the deck built for her, she's going to be a superstar in that deck. Next up, we have Sleep Paralysis. 3 and a blue for an enchantment aura at common. Enchants a creature, and as it enters the battlefield, tap target creature, or tap enchanted creature, and it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So we've seen this effect for significantly cheaper. I believe we've seen this at 3 in some cases, but at 4, this is still completely serviceable. This is a solid 2, and the effect will always be good for Limited. There's better removal for in this set, but this is not something that I wouldn't be, you know, embarrassed to pick up if I'm already in blue, and I'm playing a little bit more of a defensive, tempo-oriented deck. And next up, we have got a Spectral Sailor. Shiver me timbers. A ship that sails in these mean seas for Sula. Yeah, Adam Beckett Brass getting a shout out there on the flavor text. Nice. A single blue mana gets you a Spirit Pirate. Uncommon 1/1 with Flash. Already have my interest. It flies. Double interest. 3 and a blue. Draw a card. Super interest. Yeah, this card is really, really powerful. 2.5 for me. You know, the stats being what they are, that's not what I'm looking at here. I want to play this on turn 1, get a few shots in. If my opponent has blockers, you know, reach creatures, bigger flyers, I don't care. I will bury them in card advantage at some point with this creature. At any point, I can activate this twice. Game over. Just flat out, the game is not going well for them. This is a very, very good card here. I guess Spectral Sailor here, a 2.5. Next up, we've got Tail's End. 1 and a blue for an instant at rare. Counter target, activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spells. So it's a Stifle. That's cool. Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to be really hard-pressed to have an opening for this in Limited. Now, it's sideboard material, plain and simple, because if your opponent does have one of the massive legendary creatures in this set, of which there are 15 that I can think off my head, top of my head, that are absolutely worth countering, Planeswalkers, Mythic Legendaries, and the Monocolored Legendaries, I would not be embarrassed to fire this off and be quite thematic about it, because it's literally the end of their tail. So that's kind of neat. And is this Gideon in this art? Because that's sad. That's very, very sad. Yeah, this is a solid sideboard card, but when you can fire it off, you know, you're gonna feel like a hero when you do. And next up, we have ourselves Unsummon. Classic, clean, elegant blue card. A single blue mana gets you an instant at common that returns target creature to its owner's hand. Bread and butter. Yeah, Unsummon will always be playable in Limited. Maybe not in massive quantities. You know, it's always playable, like I said, and it will almost always be good, whether it's, you know, knocking out a creature out of attacking, blowing out a combat step if they've gone for a pump spell, bouncing your own creature even to a blanket removal spell. Always flexible, always playable. It's a solid 2. You know, you don't want to overload your deck with these, but a couple of these, 2 or 3 copies, I wouldn't be embarrassed to have in my deck. Next up, we have the Warden of Evos Isle. 2 and a blue for a 2/2 bird wizard at uncommon, flying, and spells you cast with, or creature spells you cast with flying cost 1 less to cast now. The ability on here is basically irrelevant. You know, if you're in the blue flyer deck, by all means, go crazy with it, but a 3 mana 2/2 flyer is just playable. Just stats alone, just playable. This is a 2.25 for me, with a bit of a build around me aspect to it, but I don't think you need to go that route, even if you just have one copy of this in your deck. Any incidental flyers won't matter, but this is just a good, solid card on its own. Very, very powerful effect. Moving right along to Winged Words. Now, especially if you've got those flyers, why not play this? 2 and a blue for a sorcery at common. This spell costs 1 less to cast if you control a creature with flying, and you draw 2 cards. Divination with upside. Awesome. And as you all know, Divination is always playable and limited. You know, these are typically slower formats, especially at your pre-release, where, say it with me, card advantage is king or queen. So this is just good. This is just good stuff here. You know, if you're not under any pressure, play this on turn 3, flying creature or not. I will always be happy to draw more cards in a game of limited. Solid 2 for me. Don't go crazy with it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to play a bunch of, you know, weak flyers just to enable it. The card's good on its own. And next up, we've got Yarok's Wave Crasher. So we're going to see Yarok once we get to the gold cards, and he's pretty good. 3 in a blue elemental uncommon 4/4 as it enters the battlefield. Return another creature you control to its owner's hand. So a little awkward that it has to be one of your own creatures, but if you have something like Agent of Treachery, let's see, where'd the other one go? Octo Prophet, Ferry Miscreant, you do have the ability to rebuy your ETB effects. And a 4-mana 4/4 beater is just absurd. Like, this is just a good, powerful Magic card, especially in blue. You just don't see this too often, stat-wise, on blue cards without having, you know, flying or, you know, unblockability. This is just raw stats right here. And that's really good. I think it's a 2.25. It has a little bit of a build around me aspect to it because you do want to have an ETB effect to rebuy. You know, I just hope they don't kill your target in response to you playing this and then you have to bounce this back to your hand. That's awkward. And we're going to wrap things up yet again with another underwhelming card. We had Yoketox in white, and now we have Zephyr Charge. 1 in a blue for an enchantment at common, and you pay 1 in a blue and give target creature to gain... Oh, wait, this isn't an aura! Oh... Reading the card explains the cards, kids. This can give any creature flying. It's still bad. I'm not going to play this probably. But yeah, this is it's a neat little trick here. You know, if it's a good way to break board stalls. Like 23rd, 24th playable, and it's a good mana sink. It's definitely a good mana sink too. So I'm going to amend my rating of a 1 and bump it to like a 1.5. This might actually be more playable than I'm giving it credit for, but it probably isn't. And yeah, what a mediocre way to end the set review for blue. Gosh. So just looking at the blue cards here already, I know I'm biased. I love blue cards in general. Already I'm seeing a significant step up in power over the white cards. Will that trend continue into black and beyond? I have no idea, but I'm excited to review those cards just the same. So let me know down in the comments whether or not you agree, disagree, did I miss something entirely? Is Zephyr Charge actually a hidden gem in the set, and you can't wait to kill me with it at the pre-release next Friday, because those are kicking off at 7 p.m. like your normal F&Ms do. So that's pretty sweet. So take this knowledge, I implore you, go forth and complete your pre-release quest, whether you be battling two-headed giant like I will be, winning a box, whatever you're going to be doing. Have a lot of fun with it. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel here and catch all our brand new content every week. We'll be coming at you guys with more videos. We'll be doing the black, the red, the green, artifact golds and lands next week. So be on the lookout for those videos and have a great night, everybody. Thanks for watching.